Brother Burness, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Very, very nice close-up of you there.
Yeah, that's right. Keeping an eye on everybody.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Brother Huffman, good to have you here. Always good when my speaker is here.
I do what I can. I do what I can.
That might have been an issue. All right. And Brother London is here. Good to have you with us, sir.
Good to be here.
Yeah, we just spoke the other day. I'm playing with my Zoom here. Huge giant head. All right. Get my ducks in a row here. Let's see, Brian made you a co-host there.
Thank you. Paul Griffin just coming in.
Morning, Brother Paul.
And someone else, Jonathan. Yeah, you got him.
All right. Yes. Another old hand. I don't have, oh, okay. I was queuing up my next on and I don't have it yet, so gotta look somewhere else. Morning, Brother Jonathan. How are you today?
Still connecting to audio.
It's still connected. That's okay, got that.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Brother Anderson. How are you?
Good morning. It's afternoon here in Scotland.
Yes, afternoon. Sorry.
Yes. Nice to see you all. How are we all doing? Everybody well?
Very well, thank you.
I'll be right
And good afternoon. I'm in the same part of the world as you, mate.
That's right, Brian.
I hope to be up. I hope to join you guys out there pretty soon. My family and I have a trip planned to London the end of this month, so we're pretty excited.
That's good. So you'll be about 400 miles away from me and about 300 miles away from me.
Yes. So one of my destinations is to go visit the Freemason Hall over there in London. Super excited
Right, yeah.
about that.
That's good.
Mhm.
Is getting worse, not better. The average cost of goods up 8.6% over a year ago. Present finance in Los Angeles. In addition to improvements blaming Exxon for the skyrocketing prices.
Dan, you have do you have a PowerPoint presentation or something you're going to need to share?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Let's see. I wanted to show, this was from the last meeting. These are my two co-hosts. This is General Grievous and Ham Solo, and the two of them keep me company. So Grievous is on my left and Ham Solo's on my right. Most of the time when I'm working or when I'm hosting, pretty much when I'm sitting in this chair, they like to sit here besides me and keep me company. So I took that shot during the last meeting. I didn't want to interrupt the presentation when I took the picture, but I forgot to show it at the end. But so I want to share that with y'all. So yeah, it's kind of neat. They both like laying in here, keeping me company. Afternoon, Brother Clark. Good to have you with us.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
Oh no, you're morning. You're here in the States. That's right. Are you not? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're actually indoors for once. You're not in your truck. Or is that
Nope.
just another screen?
No, not truck.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Well, it's just after 10, so I'll go ahead and do the introductory stuff. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Virginia Research Lodge number 1777's semi-weekly unstated meeting. I'm going to put in the chat our usual links for you. That is the link to our Facebook group that I think most of you are on already, and then a link to our website where we have our research papers are posted and some other fun information I've put up over the years. Then we have our YouTube channel, which is where all of our unstated meetings will be made available on YouTube. When I get to them, I haven't done last meetings yet. I meant to do it this week. But all the rest of them are up there in a playlist. And then my email, if you want to sign up for our research paper, if you're one of the few people out there who has not already signed up for our research paper. So good to have you all here. Trying to get in the frame right. I guess that we'll have to do. Yeah, I can sit up. I don't know. All right. So let's see. Anyone to share, pass on to the group? Anything going on exciting in your world of masonry or whatever you want to share with us? I'm going to mute Alan there. Anyone? No. Everyone's having a dull, boring life, and this is the highlight of your week. Okay, good. Glad to provide some entertainment for y'all. Someone's got to do it, all right? And this is better than television because it's free. So we do have Norfolk Scottish Rite is having our annual reunion because of COVID. We didn't have one in 2020. And we typically have two, one in the spring, one in the fall. Our next one is going to be starting here in June. So we only had one last year in June, and we're only having one this year in June. I don't believe we're planning one for the fall. I don't know. I personally think maybe once a year is better. We get a bigger class and all, and maybe get better attendance. But that's coming up. I'm in a couple of degrees there, so looking forward to doing that again. That's always fun. And if anyone asks you to be a degree master, say no and run screaming. It's a thankless job and you'll hate it. So as much as we need people to do it, I understand what people don't want. It's hard to get people to commit to a degree. It's hard to get people to even if they've committed to show up for a degree, to get them to show up for the practices. It's an ongoing battle. I don't know why that is. So I'm sure I'm not the only one dealing with that issue. So anyway, that's all we have going on. We had our meeting. Let's see. Keith, our meeting was end of May. So we've had, it was on the 21st. So we've had at least one unstated since then. We did have a meeting back in May. Brother Wes Latchford gave a good talk on the Tyler's sword. That was quite interesting. I think I talked about it in the last unstated. He did a really nice job with that. I'm hoping that Rooster or Brother Bronson will be here today. But we do have our marshal here. We do have our secretary, so we're doing pretty darn good. So, an idea. Go ahead,
Chris,
Keith.
don't forget now, I'm not the secretary anymore.
I know. Well, you are I don't know quite what you are. You're the secretary emeritus and the assistant now. But yes, you'll always be my secretary. How about our Luddite secretary? How about that?
Thank you so much.
You're in charge of all things written on stone tablets and other ancient media. That's okay. I got to figure, like, our technology, that's got to be one of the major innovations. I mean, I'm sure typewriters were a big change, but going back, secretaries, you use pen and ink. It probably is only in recent years that y'all switched maybe typewriters for typing up your minutes, maybe, but technology wise, it's been pretty steady, I would think, over the years. The telephone, I'm sure, changed things a bit, but we always had post, I don't know. It seems like in the last 20, 30 years, secretaries' jobs have gotten more complicated. Easier in a way, but complicated if you're not as familiar with all the new technology. So, Robert's iPhone, I do believe, there he is. Here's our senior warden joining us. I was talking about him, so he shows up. So I'll stop talking about him now. Hey, how you doing, Brother Bronson? You're on mute.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right. I was just saying that I was hoping that Rooster or you would show up, and there you are. So you all obviously heard me out there. I don't know. Hey, I think we should consider, while I have you on here, and we got John London and Keith here, of course, is I was going to ask if we should maybe if we want to move our August meeting to the 4th Saturday as a test run, we can get a dispensation to do that. And that maybe we try that and see what kind of response we get from our local brothers, and if it's worth pursuing a bylaws change, kind of give it a dry run. But we need to get the word out soon if we're going to do that.
Yeah, that's going to be for August, right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you talked with Rooster about this?
I have not. And what I'd like to suggest is we have like a Zoom meeting among just the officers that we kind of get together and kick around things, because obviously with Rooster's recent health issues, he hasn't been to a meeting yet. And I think all of us maybe should get together and kind of kick some of the things you and I talked about, and other things we want to kind of maybe discuss things more, because if we're only meeting 4 times a year, it's hard for the officers to kind of do any kind of long range planning, because pretty much we're there. We talk a little beforehand. We're seeing other people that we don't know, they haven't seen. We have the meeting, we have lunch, and then we go home. It's we as the officers, I think, maybe need to get together on our own and kind of talk about the lodge and where we're going and what our plans are.
Yeah.
With Zoom, we can do that easily. So
yeah,
maybe we'll do that next month or something. I don't know.
August 14th is a Sunday.
It's August. What did I say?
You said the 4th Saturday, wouldn't you?
4th Saturday. August 20th is when it's stated. It's planned, and I was thinking we move it to the 27th, the 4th Saturday. But that's something we can all discuss. Do you have anything to Robert, you got anything to pass on before we go to our speaker?
No. I definitely we need to sit down and talk about some things, because I've been thinking about it, and I do have some concerns about us moving it with, and I want to talk about that.
Of course. I just wanted to get the ball rolling, because Keith and I have been kicking it around, and obviously whatever the lodge as a whole decides, but I just want to at least get the discussion started. So that's good. We should probably meet maybe in July.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, and I want to welcome Brother Aday, who just joined us. Oh, Bernie Duggan's coming in. Very good. See, I was stalling for our past Grandmaster to join us.
Okay. You know who's important to you.
Yeah, that's right. You should ask the question, how do I possibly know these people are coming? So anyway. Yeah, next up is Bill Gates. He's going to give us all $1 billion. So any minute he'll be, any minute. All right. Oh, Bernie. Oh, no, Bernie's here. Okay. Morning, Brother Bernie. Good to see you, sir.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing fine. A little late getting in.
Oh, you're fine. We tend to waste about 10 minutes just talking about nothing. Just give everybody a chance to get in and get settled. Okay. I really don't want people coming in the middle of the speaker's talk. So I figure if I wait about 10 minutes and just kind of talk to everybody and do this nonsense, everybody gets in and settled, so the speaker has an uninterrupted audience. Okay, once again, I want to thank everyone for coming out to Virginia Research Lodge for our unstated meeting. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brother Dan Huffman, who is not a past master. I promoted him briefly, so he'll give his bona fides, whatever, and let's enjoy his talk on conspiracy theories.
Thanks so much, brother. Gents, it's an honor to be here with you this morning. My name is Dan Huffman. I'm a member of Cherrydale, Columbia, number 42, Arlington, chapter 35, Ward Fairfax, council number 90, A. Douglas Smith Jr. Lodge of Research, 1949, and the Alexandria Valley of the Scottish Rite. So I get around a bit. Today's talk is on conspiracy theories. It's more of a general talk, not strictly Masonic, but there are some takeaways for us as Masons that I think we would all benefit from. And I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Everybody sees that, I hope.
Yes.
All right. Now, I forgot that I don't have dual screens anymore. So, hang on one sec. Probably ought to have the paper up so I can read that too. Do one of these jobs. All right. There we go. All right. So, quick overview of what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about what conspiracy theories are, what makes us want to believe them, what is bias and how we can counter it, how do we avoid bias in research, and then we'll conclude and then have some time for questions. My opening salvo, I always try to find some ancient dead guy who's smarter than we are. There's two things. There are in fact two things: science and opinion. The former begets knowledge, and the latter ignorance, and that's Hippocrates. So, conspiracy theories are not a product of the modern age, social media, or the 24-hour news cycle. Throughout spoken and written history, there's ample evidence of these theories, especially in times of great societal distress. If you think of any major historical era, and a conspiracy theory will show itself. Some famous ones: William Shakespeare didn't write his own plays. Queen Elizabeth I was actually a man. John Wilkes Booth was not killed in the federal raid. Nero set fire to Rome and played a fiddle while it happened. Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, was actually Jack the Ripper, and the list goes on. As Masons, we're not strangers to conspiracy theories, and we are often implicated and occasionally accused in perpetuating the very maladies contained within them. Freemasonry is a religion or a cult. We control the world via our overlords, the Illuminati. Masons fake the moon landing and work with NASA to teach that the world is flat, and on and on. This paper won't spend much time on specific theories, but we'll focus instead on what conspiracy theories are, the psychology behind them, their characteristics, and their relevance in Masonic research. A conspiracy theory explains an event or a set of circumstances as the result of a secret plot by usually powerful conspirators, or it's a theory asserting that a secret of great importance is being kept from the public, and that's just the dictionary definition. At the highest level, these theories are an explanation that blames a group of conspirators as the cause of the event or state of the world. More specifically, conspiracy theories consist of the following three interconnected characteristics. First, the actions and goals of the group are nefarious, threatening, or illegal. Second, the conspirators manage, because they are particularly powerful, sly, or manipulative, to control the course of events and the official narrative. And third, the group operates in secret and have initiated a cover-up to hide its work. This cover-up involves the fabrication or removal of evidence or influencing those who control the official narrative. Using this definition, it is almost by design impossible to prove conspiracy theories false. All attempts to discredit or disapprove or to disprove a conspiracy theory will almost certainly be said to be part of the cover-up and narrative of the very theory that is trying to be refuted. Even common source information will be rejected, and likely for the very same reasons. Anyone that does not agree with the theory of the conspiracy is in fact part of the conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theories are generally grouped into three different categories: event conspiracies, systemic conspiracies, and super conspiracies. This categorization helps to explain the scope of the conspiracy at play. Event conspiracies are those where a group of plotters are held responsible for a single event, like the assassination of JFK. In systemic conspiracies, the plotters are believed to have broader goals of securing control over a country, a region, or even the entire world. Typical examples include conspiracy theories vilifying Jews, Muslims, Masons, and the Illuminati. Theories of super conspiracies posit a hierarchy of conspiracies where the lower level conspirators are controlled and manipulated to act against innocent people by powerful distant forces. There is another type that seems to be far more prevalent today, and that is the subversion mythology. This type of theory insinuates that the major institutions of society, namely the government, media, and big corporations, are thought to be under the control of an outside force. This leads into another type of conspiracy theory called, I always forget to do that. This was actually supposed to be cut out. These myths are particularly popular along political lines and with extremist groups with radical ideologies. The key to this is that the outside force has somehow already taken control of our society or government, and by empowering its allies from within, will certainly bring upon the destruction of the social order. Multiple factors contribute to the psychology and susceptibility of those that believe in conspiracy theories. Economy, sociology, and history all play major roles, but predominantly it is psychology that leads people to go all in on these theories. The first factor is called fundamental attribution error, which is our tendency to prefer dispositional explanations to situational ones. When we observe an event happening, we're much more likely to attribute it to some intentional internal motive than to circumstance or happenstance. Conspiracy theories are all dispositional by definition and are usually done that way on purpose. That makes them very satisfying for our primitive brain, which aids in our fight or flight instincts. Fear is an incredible motivator, whether physical or otherwise. Fear of change and fear of being excluded by that change. In times of significant demographic, economic, and political change, those that feel that they have been detrimentally impacted are more likely to embrace a mass conspiracy to rationalize their displacement from a perceived position of power and influence. The most recent political campaigns are a testament to that, stretching from 2004 to the present day. The COVID pandemic has also contributed to a massive increase in conspiracy theories due to a number of factors. For instance, that the very virus was created to destroy one president, that it was a biological weapon manufactured by an enemy, just to name a couple. The world is an ever-changing place, and it is hard for everyone to keep up with the pace of change. People begin to feel excluded from the system and cannot face the fact that perhaps their role in the system is changing. If a person cannot process that they are not as relevant a part of the system as they once felt, it's easy to blame the system, and it is a short jump to believing that there is a conspiracy to make you fail. People can feel alienated from the system and are thus able to believe anything about the system being stacked against them. This stems from a sense of entitlement, that we as people are entitled to be included in the system. This entitlement can come from a belief in the superiority of a specific political, religious, or social ideology, which leads to disenfranchisement when the particular group is no longer in power. Masonically, our very nature creates exclusion. If you are not a member of our fraternity, you cannot know the secrets we strive to keep. Even within our fraternity, there are secrets upon secrets. Entered apprentices cannot know the secrets of the following degree. Royal Arch Masons don't know the secrets of Commandery, and York Rite Masons do not know the secrets of the Scottish Rite. Outsiders view us as an all-powerful and influencing society. Freemasons pull the strings of all levels of government. We kill those that divulge our secrets, like the William Morgan affair, and the list goes on. By our very existence and policies, we are all but demanding our place at the center of conspiracy theories. Bias is a major factor in whether a person will be susceptible to conspiracy theory. Normally, bias is a minor part of our psychology that helps us make simple, everyday decisions without much thought, nearly instinctual. Throughout our evolution as a species, we have built mechanisms to solve specific problems which help in the overall success of our species. We created shortcuts to aid in our survival. Hearing a noise in the woods will automatically trigger a danger assumption. Seeing a herd of animals will trigger the need to hunt and gather. Placing a village near a clean water source leads one to assume that it's a great place to settle. Not to mention our preference in cars, restaurants, sports teams, and fashion are all based on a type of bias, and it is for the most part harmless. When conspiracy theories thrive, where conspiracy theories thrive is when people are not aware of their own bias and do not challenge those bias when being presented with new information. There are, generally speaking, 14 types of bias that impact human decision making, and thusly our ability to be taken in by conspiracy theories. And I'm not going to go into this whole list. I'll send the list over to your master, and he can make it available for you. But I encourage you to go through, especially as research lodge masons, to go in and look at these different kinds of bias and then apply them to your own thoughts and see if what you're putting out is something that just goes with what you already believe, or if you're challenging yourself in any way. For our members, we need to be hyper vigilant of our own bias when conducting research. Understanding your individual biases is of the utmost importance before proceeding on a topic for research. Bias exists in all of us and can impact all parts of our research. Referencing the aforementioned list of biases, it is almost inevitable that our individual bias impacts the product that we create. A paper by the Queen's University of Belfast states, understanding research bias is important for several reasons. First, it exists in all research, across research designs, and is difficult to eliminate. Second, bias can occur at each stage of the research process. And third, bias impacts on the validity and reliability of study findings, and misinterpretation of the data can have important consequences for practice. The paper further lists 5 types of research bias: design bias, selection participation bias, data collection bias, analysis bias, and publication bias. Specifically applicable to Masonic research, there are 4 types that impact us directly. Design bias impacts the goal of the product you are creating. What is the purpose of the paper you're writing? Who is your intended audience? What's the ultimate point or lesson you're trying to impart? If the paper you're writing does not have a clear goal or purpose, the likelihood that your paper will make the intended impact lessens with each word written. Your data collection bias occurs when the writer's own biases are not properly acknowledged and accounted for. The ability to pick impartial sources is diminished, and the paper being written will likely just confirm your own cognitive bias. Analysis bias also takes your own opinion into account and will impact your ability to impartially review and select sources. Publication bias in qualitative papers is more likely to occur because of reliance on primary and secondary sources rather than quantitative data. And this is particularly important in the work that we do because there's not a lot of quantitative data for masonry, and a lot of it is all qualitative. As researchers, overcoming our own bias is crucial to the work that we are undertaking. Bias exists in all study designs, and although research should attempt to minimize bias, outlining potential sources of bias enables greater critical evaluation of the research findings and conclusions. Researchers bring to each study their experiences, ideas, prejudices, and personal philosophies, which, if accounted for in advance of the study, enhance the transparency of possible research bias. Clearly articulating the rationale for choosing an appropriate research design to meet the study aims can reduce common pitfalls in relation to bias. We must steadfastly acknowledge and confront our own bias and work diligently to review our work through our own lens and those of others. Qualitative research relies on judgment and experience, which is subjective and not data-driven. Once we identify what biases we are holding, we are the better enabled to work to keep from impacting our final product. And this is not an easy task to undertake. When confronting our biases and susceptibility to conspiracy theories, we're fighting human evolution. When we make an observation, we are far more likely to assume intent rather than chance. We look at situations through a lens of confirmation to reinforce what we already believe. We want to see, do, believe the things that support what we already believe. And lastly, our desire to know more than others. And this comes from as far back as human evolution research can take us. Knowledge is power in multiple ways. Where to find the best and most reliable prey, where to build safe shelter, where to find clean water. And all of these things played heavily into human survival, and depriving our rivals of that knowledge was the key to success. All of this plays into how we make decisions now and how we perceive the world around us. Concerted effort, knowing thy oneself, and being open to differing opinions is the only way to actually counter bias. In conclusion, as Masons, it is our duty to fight against belief in conspiracy theories, especially as Masonic researchers. As an institution, we pride ourselves on embracing truth and base our conclusions on the logic, rhetoric, and geometric principles. We were instructed, while being passed at the degree of fellowcraft, the importance of the study and application of the seven liberal arts and sciences. We are pushed to use the working tools of the plumb, square, and level in guiding our actions and interacting with all mankind. As researchers, we are granted a special license to provide context and instruction to those outside of our lodge and calling. We should be constantly challenging our biases and making sure that we acknowledge the ones we cannot overcome. Providing a quality product which pushes Freemasonry forward is our goal, and only by constantly pushing ourselves to be better will we do that. And that is it. Questions, comments, concerns, as we used to say in the Army, bitches, moans, gripes, complaints.
Very good, Brother Huffman. Let me get back to the gallery one sec.
Oh, just for reference, Andy Valenga is the master of my research lodge, A.W. Smith Junior Lodge Research Room in 1949, and it's always a pleasure to take a chance to embarrass him in front of others. So thanks for showing up, Worshipful.
Oh, is he here? Good.
Oh, yeah, he popped in.
Gallery. Sorry, I had to fight to get back to the gallery here. Yeah, morning, Worshipful Valenga. Good to have you join us. Oh, and Brother Irungu, who joined right at the start of your talk there.
Oh, thanks, Worshipful. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Any questions for Brother Huffman?
Comments, critiques, anything? I'll take any feedback.
Yes, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
This is Robert Bronson. How do you work against your biases when you're picking a subject?
So conspiracy theories has always been something that I've been interested in because of how quickly they spread and how toxic they are. And my bias against conspiracy theories is like, how could you possibly believe that the earth is flat? How could you believe that, there's so much science to debunk it, right? And everybody that tries to prove that it's flat is consistently proven wrong. Yet people still lean in on it because it's hard to challenge what you feel in your heart is where you're at. So, when I was coming at this topic, I wanted to, initially I was like, I just want to find as much as I can to prove how ridiculous these things are. And as I started doing my research on it, I wanted to start with the science of it because science is predominantly black and white. Everything's got bias, like the paper said, especially, and science isn't excluded. So I looked for psychology sources from multiple sources. I looked for, I pulled a source out of Ireland. I pulled a source from some pretty well-respected periodicals. And I started looking at it and figuring out that, when I figured out that it was really evolutionary, and that trying to challenge your bias is going against your very nature as a person, it actually made me a little bit more graceful towards the people that lean in on these things. And so what I tried to do was find sources that weren't hostile towards conspiracy theories, that were more objective about it, so that every time I had an opinion or a bias about it, I would be challenged by whatever I was going to use in the paper. And so by fighting myself throughout the writing process and the research process, I think it made me a little more objective instead of critical about people that lean in on conspiracy theories, because they're easy to do. They're exciting. You feel like you're learning something that nobody else knows. It gives you a little danger. It appeals to a ton of different pieces of our psychology. And, it's real hard to not give people grace to fight human nature. And so, that's how I challenge myself. Is the first thing I try to do when I come up with a topic is, if I'm trying to make a point, I look at the counterpoint. So if I'm trying to say that, for real easy, Freemasonry is great, the first thing I'm going to look for is, why does Freemasonry the end of the world? And then I'm going to reverse engineer from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. This is a good question.
In the same vein, Dan, when you mentioned, when I'm doing research, like if I pick a topic I'm going to write about, I'm coming in I'm starting with at least some basic knowledge about what I want to go read about. Like, believe it or not, when I started, I mentioned our lodge website, which is in the links there in the chat. I started out building I already had built a list of all the lodges in Virginia, especially ones with websites and Facebook pages. And that wasn't hard to catalog from Grand Lodge records and all that. And that was a lot of fun. I looked at every single lodge website at least once, and I periodically checked, make sure they're still there. But then I said, well, I want to have all the Grand Lodges in North America. So I set out to get all of the American Grand Lodges. And at the time was just what you consider mainstream or state Grand Lodges. I did start cataloging Prince Hall. I've got, I think, all of them in there now. But then I said at some point, it's like, well, let me go ahead and I'm going to write a paper on the supreme councils in the world, because I figured, there's northern and southern Masonic, the northern and southern jurisdiction in the U.S. and then the Prince Hall counterparts, and there's got to be a few in Europe, and pretty much we've got most of the world. And now I start digging, and guess what? There's almost 200 supreme councils throughout the world. Almost every country outside of the United States has a supreme council. So my original bias, my original perception was, well, yeah, because we started, Scottish Rite started in America. So naturally, we cover most of the world, and then a couple places form their own. Almost every single country has their own supreme council of the Scottish Rite. So there's almost as many supreme councils as there are Grand Lodges, which is just blew me away when I found that out. And that quickly turned my focus of my paper. I said, there's no way I can write a paper on 180 some supreme councils. It would be just as pointless and as boring as to write a paper on all famous Masons. And most of us have heard the lists. I've seen people recite them. If I was to sit here and read to you the names of 200, 300 famous Masons, you'd recognize probably 2/3 of them, but you'd be bored to tears by the time I'm done reading. If I'm just sitting here reading names of Masons, you're like, oh, okay. But that's not a story. That's just me reading a bunch of names at you. It'd be almost the same as me reading the names of countries: Supreme Council of Brazil, Supreme Council of Colombia, Supreme Council of Ecuador, and maybe the year they were chartered. You'd fall asleep on me. So that led me to write a paper just on France, because I found that France has several dozen Grand Lodges, Grand Orients, Supreme Councils, and various other nationwide Masonic bodies it's had over the years. So just picking one country that's got 300 years of history in Masonry made for an interesting paper, because it was focused. It wasn't too much information, and I was able to make an interesting story going year to year roughly, and say this rose and then this fell and this came out and so on. So point being, I thought one thing, there's only a handful of supreme councils, and I was completely wrong. So you have to take that into account when you go to write a paper. I give people advice on writing papers. I say, think of a question you have about Masonry that no one's answered for you yet, and set out to write a paper to answer that question. And by the time that will give you something interesting, that when someone sits down to listen to your paper, they're like, oh, okay, I might have thought of that myself, or that's an interesting question. And if you can answer the question over the course of the paper, that's going to be interesting for the viewer, for the reader, or the listener. And it also gives you a start and stop point. When I successfully answer the question, I'm done. But the whole point is, as soon as you start researching, you may immediately find out that your whole original premise is wrong, and you have to be willing to scuttle your original premise, but use the data you've learned to write something better and more accurate. And I have written papers that I get in discussions with people, and I found out there's even more information on a topic. I read a couple of sources on the rectified Scottish Rite, or the observant sky, the observant right of Masonry, and turns out there's a whole bunch of other stuff about that body I never knew of, or I'm totally missed the Memphis Mizraim rite, which is very prominent in Europe, and I didn't see anything about it. So it just gives you an opportunity to either to amend your earlier paper or to write a whole brand new one on this whole other field that you found when you're doing your research. So yeah, I mean, don't assume that you know the answer when you start researching. Start with your question and look for answers.
Yeah, well, the first thing you have to do as a Masonic researcher or in anything is admit that you don't know anything. You may know something, but that's an inherent bias. It's confirmation bias, right? And you have to fight against your instinct to prove yourself right. Yes. And you have to be able to admit that your inherent bias of your own superiority on a topic is probably unfounded. And your question of I'm going to look for how many Supreme Councils could there possibly be? That's an inherent bias of the superiority of American Masonry over others. And it's not wrong. We're American. We're friggin' fantastic. We're the best there ever was. History was written starting 1776. Don't even get me started. But and that's obviously a joke.
We got rid of those pesky Brits. Started doing things the right way.
Rather,
you mean we got rid of the pesky Americans? Gave it back to them.
Yeah. For our Scotsmen on the call, the first thing you have to do is eliminate the American bias, which is, and then you can start talking about the truth. But yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point, Chris. Is that you always start off a paper thinking you know something, and ideally you'll be quickly proven wrong, and then expand your knowledge. And because if you're writing a softball paper, then you're already on the wrong step. Unless you're just trying to fill a meeting in your Blue Lodge because somebody needs a presentation. I've got a logic paper that's a softball paper that I threw together at a night, but I would never present that at Research Lodge because it's not up to the same standard. But you can get away with a lot more in Blue Lodge than you can in Research Lodge.
I would argue we need to bring that standard with us to the Blue Lodge, but
I would too.
We can be more in depth with like the Grand Lodge wants us to be, have our the ABA standard. We want to meet a certain level of criteria with all the resources and all like that. So maybe the Chicago we may not meet that standard in the Blue Lodge, and we should strive for that at least maybe once a year in the Research Lodge. But I'm just saying, I think there's a minimal level of standard of research papers, and we need to bring up the bar elsewhere.
Oh yeah, but you got to know your audience too. And I mean,
well, that's true. I know.
My brothers in Cherrydale, they like softball papers.
Oh yeah, it's got to be fun. Oh yeah,
it's got to be funny. Otherwise, they're going to boo me out of the group.
My follow-up paper about the Masonic rites of Europe was about 20 minutes long, and it got way in depth, and I nearly killed the audience at Princess Andy's. They're like, So yeah, you gotta maybe lighten it up a little for the regular Blue Lodge.
Yeah, like this paper started off as a Blue Lodge paper, and then Andy and I worked together, turned it into a Research Lodge paper. And so the first version of this was a lot lighter and sillier, and I talked about how birds aren't real and stuff like that. But for a Research Lodge, you want to work at a higher level. Andy always says that this should be graduate level work and not lighthearted. It can be lighthearted, but it should be well researched and documented, cited.
Any other questions from the group? I had a comment. Excuse the music in the background. I'm actually in the gym, so first I wanted to say thank you for well put together presentation. One of the things I enjoyed the most was the reputable sources. I think that's very important when you're doing presentations like this. And to the point about research papers, when I was in graduate school, one of the things I found interesting was that I was always researching things that I wasn't an expert on quite yet. so it allowed me to come in without bias, because I didn't know. And sometimes I think, when picking topics for research, it's good to pick something that you don't know, because one, you learn something, and two, you just come in completely unbiased, and the presentation that you put together is going to be it's not going to be skewed. You're just giving out facts. So
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, if you come at a paper that you're not if you come at a topic that you don't know much about, it definitely helps reduce the bias that you have, because you're not confirming something that you already suspect you know. You're coming at it, from with a relatively blank slate, and so that definitely will help to reduce your bias. And since you'll be coming at it from a place of no without expertise, you're going to be more likely to seek multiple sources rather than the ones that support what you already think. So yeah, no, that's a great point to make.
Thank you, Jonathan. Anyone else with a comment or a question? Okay. You've already biased them to think that there's nothing more for them to say.
Damn right. I'm the expert on conspiracy theories masonically.
That's right. That's right. Well, being a reptilian overlord has its advantages.
Sorry, I have a...
Hey, Brother Day. How you doing?
Yes, how are you doing? Good. How much of these conspiracy theories are basically just for monetary gain, and not that they just, interested in just disseminating false information, but they feel that there's a market out there to lure, unsuspecting and profane people who might just believe into it, and in the process probably earn some money through it?
That's an interesting question, and that's one that I would have to make some assumptions about based on my biases towards people that promote and proliferate conspiracy theories. I think it's a safe assumption to make that certain conspiracies certainly have monetary, there's certainly the potential for monetary gain. And I would say that those are almost, you'd have to look at like political, for sure. My side is out to fight the evils of the other side. Donate to us so we can get into power, and we can safely shepherd you through these crises. I would say that I think it would be a pretty safe assumption to say that, because it's always about, knowledge, power, and those things usually tend to have a third wheel of a financial aspect. And Andy just turned his video on, so I know he's about to say something. But I would say that it wouldn't be a difficult jump to make from what's the goal of the conspiracy, and do they stand to gain either power or money from it, or it definitely influence. And so, I guess it would depend on what kind of currency. Is it hard currency? Is it influential currency? It's not necessarily going to always be dollars, but there can certainly be a financial aspect to it.
Thank you.
But I don't have any specific data or a source on that. But I'm sure there's a financial aspect.
Yeah, Dan, if I could throw in real quick on
100%.
that. So a very, very specific example. So we kind of, we were joking around about the Flat Earth Society and the community of people who believe the Earth is flat and that astronauts and everybody's been lying to us. There was a stuntman named Mad Mike Hughes who was building basically rockets with the intent of proving the Earth was in fact flat. And these are steam powered rockets, and he'd put himself in them and shoot himself up in the air and parachute back down. He did not actually believe the Earth was flat, but was taking advantage of that conspiracy theory to make monetary gain. And it kind of stupid because he augured in and went to the side of a mountain. And if you want to Google Mad Mike Hughes, you can get the whole story on that. But but that's an example of someone taking a conspiracy theory and basically taking advantage of it for monetary gain. Additionally, a lot of conspiracy theories are used for power struggles, to gain a power edge, or create kind of a mass mentality that we're you're good against evil or something along those lines. And those can be not necessarily for monetary gain, but could be used to try to influence power, ideology, or legitimacy for that reason. But to build off of Christopher's point earlier, and how do we avoid bias in research and these type of things in research, is one of the big rules is like never fall in love with your thesis. It's you may be going in thinking, hey, this is going to change everything. This is a great idea. I know this is right. And through the course of your research, you're looking at all this your confirmation bias research that agrees with you, but you have to look at the stuff that's counter to that, and how legitimate is that research. And then you maybe find out that your thesis is wrong. But from a research perspective, proving that your thesis is wrong is just as important as proving that it's right. And you can still progress Masonic research by saying, hey, listen, I came up with this idea. It turns out it was wrong, and this is more likely the way it went. So
that's a good way of summarizing what I said clumsily. Thank you.
No, but I think you nailed it on the head. And I just wanted to.
Yeah, I like that. Don't fall in love with your own thesis. I did want to say something on what Brother Dave mentioned about it's not always just money. Most people who are advocating a conspiracy theory are promoting something else of their own, I would think. And although I guess you can argue it's a conspiracy theory, but the extensive anti-Masonic bias out there by fundamentalist Christian groups with all of the tracts, the chick pamphlets and all these other things that have been out there for years, I submit that the reason that some churches lobby so heavily against men joining Masonry and to quit Masonry is they're competing for the same raw materials, which is us, men. A man who is typically married, stable, has a good job, is intelligent, is self-sufficient, is at least intellectually able to think. These are all things that those are the kind of men who are drawn to Masonry. Well, those are exactly the kind of men that a church needs as lay leaders, as Sunday school teachers, to head up committees, to be strong pillars of the church. The church is competing for the same thing, because honestly, if you look at most churches in America today, it's the mothers who are bringing the children to church. The dads typically don't attend, as a general rule. So the churches are lacking in strong male leadership to take roles within the church. And we're competing for we're recruiting from the same pool. And I think for a lot of it is, we want them to be active in the church. If you're active in Masonry, you're not going to have time to be a Sunday school teacher. You're not going to have time to come to Wednesday night Bible study because you've got lodge. You don't have time to do this and that. And our time is limited. So I think they sincerely, they want to win away the people who are going to Masonry because they want them to be active in the church. I think that's a big part of it. I don't think it's about saving, to be honest, I don't think it's about saving anyone's souls. I don't think they honestly believe half the nonsense they're saying. I think they're just trying to recruit from the same pool we're in, and that's why we're their main competition. I think there's a great deal of truth to that.
Well, that was certainly a bias-filled statement, Chris.
Yes, based on personal experience, but yes.
So before, just as a quick aside, so this is a book called The Fallacy Detective. It'll help you challenge your own bias and fight your own logical fallacies. As Masons, I think, especially, every research lodge should have a copy of this in their library. But it's super easily accessible. It reads like an idiot's guide book. But
where's the source that you can find that book?
Oh, I got it off Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon has it, yeah.
If Amazon doesn't have it, we're not allowed to read it.
That's right. No, that's fine.
But Andy actually recommended it to me when I was writing my logic paper for another presentation at a different lodge. But it's just like you read that book and you hate yourself a little bit afterwards because you're like, oh my God, I do all these things. Again, you're fighting human nature. As advanced primates, you know, our lizard brains turned us into successful upright walkers. But along the way, we built some bad habits, and you know, you're always challenging the hypothalamus and your medulla oblongata whenever you're trying to think outside the box, because the box is the comfortable place to be, and it's super easy to fall into these, you know, these logical fallacy pits. And anytime you see, you know, anybody that's on Facebook that can watch a discussion happening, you're just smashing your face into your desk because you're like, everyone is just hitting each other in the head with a straw man fallacy or a slippery slope fallacy. And so when I'm writing my papers, I keep a copy of this on my desk right next to my Chicago Manual of Style to make sure that I'm not pushing myself over the edge into a pit that I can't get out of. When I love my own thesis too much. And Andy's video's back up, so here he comes.
Right. Oh, by the way, to round out my point about the church, most Masons I know are also very active in the church, and they're deacons in their church and the Sunday school teachers. So the reality is a well-rounded man is active in his church. And I think Masonry in general does not tell you to avoid going to church, that Masonry replaces your church in any way. I think the average lodge is encouraging a brother to be as active in his church as he can, because that's part of a well-rounded life. So we can actually contribute to both. It's not 100% one way or the other, but
yeah, it's 8 segments on your 24-inch gauge.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say also another good book, if you want to get more into like kind of the biology of biases too, is the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. That's a real good, it talks about heuristics and neural networks and all that other stuff and how that contributes to bias even in research. He uses the James ossuary is a big example of that.
Yeah, you definitely want to, and Blink is a fast read. It's not a difficult book to digest. I mean, it makes you a little uncomfortable, as all good books should. They should challenge you a bit. But yeah, Blink is a great one. Fallacy Detective is another one.
By the way, you're welcome to go to our Facebook group and post maybe a link to those books.
Yeah, I will be
You
happy
can look them up later. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you put it in the chat, then I have to copy it over to the group. So it's easier for me just to task you all with putting it in our group.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to do anything that made you have to work a little harder.
You know, one of the things that Brother Andy said that struck me is that I recall I was writing a paper and I was trying to prove a point, and the point that I was just wrong, and my thesis was wrong, and I was trying to make it work no matter what. I was trying to find ways, and even so much that I would omit certain parts of the research paper, certain things in the research paper that would actually contradict me. And finally, it was a realization that I made that I said, you know what, I'm wrong. And there's just no way of me being right. And there's no way of me writing this paper and presenting it knowing that it was wrong, it's ethically wrong. And 2, I'm going to lose any credibility and get debunked by someone who may say, hey, you know what, this is wrong. So I think that statement of not falling in love with your thesis is everything, because it just proved to me, that was such a great moment for me, because I said, you know what, this is not right. I'm just going to pick another topic because I needed to write. I needed to write this paper, and what I was trying to prove was just not right. So I'm going to be getting that book because it really reminded me of that moment.
And how gut wrenching is that? when you're writing a paper and you're like, oh shit, I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I was like a few weeks into, well, not a few weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks into this paper, and I just did not want to hit the reset button on it. But I just, sometimes you have to take the loss, and I walked away knowing that one, whatever I believed before was wrong, and two, I was able to just research something else and learn, and it was something that I was able to present in good ethical conscience.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, right? Is you try to prove the point that you think you want to make, and somewhere along the way you're just turned into you find the truth, and that's what you sell to the audience. So that's the most powerful lesson you can learn is you take the L and then you circle back and you find the W.
A good example. Michael Paul has a YouTube channel, Scottish Rite of New Orleans, and he explains that he had assumed the Scottish Rite, the Supreme Council of Louisiana, had gone extinct because everybody had said they're not around anymore, and finally he kept trying to find out when they ceased to exist, and looked in the phone book, and they were listed in the phone book. He's got a good history of that on his YouTube channel. So just wanted to share that. Sometimes something has to hit you in the face for you to change your opinion.
The best way to learn is taking one on the chin.
And he's done quite a bit of videos on he's got, I think, about 3 or 4 videos dealing with their history.
Yep. I've been trying since last year about this time to get a few brothers who are members of that Supreme Council to come on here and do like a panel discussion, talk about their history and how how they're operating today. And it hasn't come together yet. It's the only it's the only topic that I haven't successfully brought here yet that I've been trying to work on. I've got speakers lined up, but it's like everything that I've thought of that I wanted that came from like, if I found speakers and the speakers already have their topics, but there are several panel discussions where the idea came from me and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this happen. And I've done this and done this and done this. That's the only one that's eluded me so far. So I hope to get that out in 2022 is get them in here because I love our panel discussions. I think they're a lot of fun, and meeting with brothers from other countries and other jurisdictions. It's a lot of fun. So I need to come back to them and say, okay, are we going to get this together or what? Brian, did you have something to add? You came off mute a bit ago, but or were you just? Huh? No, okay.
No, not a thing. Thank you.
All right. Well, I wanted to announce that our next unstated meeting will be on June 25th, and Brother Parvez Tarani, who gave a talk earlier this year, actually, will be coming back to talk about the Manitoba Legislative Building, a sacred temple at the heart of North America. In his last talk, where he was talking about the Chartres Cathedral and all the Masonic influence on that church, he had pictures of other buildings, and this was one of them that has some clearly Masonic influences that the architect worked into the building. So he's written a paper on that. So we'll be talking about that on June the 25th. So any brother has anything else to offer before we wrap it up for the day? I want to thank Brother Huffman for doing a very interesting talk and having a good discussion here. Really appreciate you coming out. By the way, it is really good. This was a brother who is a member of A. Douglas Smith Jr. Lodge of Research, and we also had the master of that lodge here. And it's good to have both of y'all here and doing some joint work with our other research bodies. I am happy to welcome any member of any of our research lodges in Virginia or any other research lodge out there who wants to come on here and speak to our audience. We'd love to have you. So this is great. I want to do more joint things with our other research ones. We had our meeting back in March that I've talked about a couple of times about where we had the panel from all of the research lodges. But you're all certainly more than welcome to come here and present something. And we do promote on our Facebook group. When any of you all you broadcast your stated meetings, you will occasionally put them online. So we're happy to promote any Zoom meetings about Masonic research on our group. Please come and post something. We're happy to promote these other things too, so you can check them out as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having us. On behalf of Andy and myself, it was a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed the conversation and the discussion afterward.
Yes.
Some really great insight. I always take notes when I present, so I've got some things to walk away with to continue to challenge myself. So thanks again for having us.
Absolutely. Brother Burtness, you came off your camera. You turned your camera on. You want to say hello or?
No, I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation. Brother Hoffman did a great job. I'm just a regular Blue Lodge person, so
no such thing. We're all amazing.
I'm brand new, and I've only been to 3 meetings so far. So
excellent. Well, then you're off to a good start by diving in the deep end with us. So
yeah.
Well, and if you're only a third meeting member, then you're very lucky to have me as your speaker today, as I am one of the most influential Masons in Virginia.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I'm sorry, Brother Burtness. It is all downhill from here.
Yeah, you're never going to get a better presentation.
That's the other way to look at it.
You might as well commit and just get active in your church, I guess, because that's all there is. So what?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. All right. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe our channel. I always forget to say that. I put it on the little title card at the end with the Mozart music. But please like and subscribe. We're never going to be we may never be huge on YouTube, but every subscription does help a little bit. I never expect my YouTube channel to ever really be monetized, but who knows? Maybe I missed the boat on that. But it is a service that I love to provide, to put these out on YouTube for people to discover. And who knows? Maybe 10 years from now, they'll just take off and be super huge, and people will be dying to watch every one of these things that we made back here in the 2000s and 20s. And who knows? You never know. But it's out there on the internet. So it's cool to take advantage of this technology and use what I know to make Masonic research more available out there to the world. So I really enjoy doing it. I'll keep doing it as long as y'all let me do it. So thank you everybody for coming. Like and subscribe. See you in 2 weeks for the next unstated meeting. And please join us in August for our August stated. And I'll probably announce in the next meeting who the speaker is, because I don't know if we have lined up yet. So
I got my first research project from watching you guys. There's a thing somebody mentioned called a phone book. I got to figure that. You have to go to the library to get that?
Yes, you do.
Fortunately, yes.
All right. Thanks.
That's
great
right.
seeing you guys.
Yeah, the other day, my niece asked me, I asked my niece for a phone book, and she thought I was stupid and just handed me her iPhone. So I took the iPhone and swatted the fly, but she wasn't really happy with me after that. So there you go. That's my dad joke for the day. You guys, let's leave on a low note. So thank you all for coming out. You all have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.